looks like it'll do it. Hey folks, welcome back to the Terror Dome. As we fly close to this sun, all the metal around the ship starts to warp and bend and kind of buckle under the temperature change. But, you know, I learned to adapt. I'm welding it all back in place and making sure the Terror Dome will be okay. It's reminding me of Michael Crichton and his thoughts on global warming, of all the topics. It'd be a little bit different for this channel for me to cover, but I feel like in this time it's kind of a touchy subject, but also quite a crucial one, to shed some light on his thoughts on global warming and the whole dreaded climate change that everyone seems to be talking about back on Earth. But yeah, so let's watch some videos and hopefully have a nice calm time about it. Hopefully. So let's get into this. What kicked this off in my thought process was I was watching this video by Caleb Malpin. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. And he was talking about Michael Crichton, Marxism, Jurassic Park and climate change. I didn't get through the whole video. I got to the beginning and he repeats something, which I'll play in a minute, over and over. And it made me feel like I want to make a video about this. I've been wanting to make a video addressing Crichton's viewpoints on global warming and climate change for a while, because I hold some very similar sentiments to that. And obviously each year when, you know, the UK right now back on Earth is going through a heat wave right now, and you know, the whole climate crisis thing comes up and it's all over the news and everything like that, and I see a lot of panic. I see a lot of young people panicking about their futures and stuff, and it kind of gets me a bit like down. I'm like, no, we shouldn't be looking at the future with dread. We should be looking at the future with hope. That's the way to fix problems, right? And yeah, I wanted to just get into this subject, and we'll see how we go. We'll just talk about it as we go. But I want to start with Caleb's video, and then we'll move quickly on from this. I just want to get to the thing that he says near the beginning. So,
now I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, the big movie was Jurassic Park. In fact, I was too young to see it. I think I saw it on TV years later. But it was the big movie. It was selling box office records, directed by Steven Spielberg. Everyone thought Jurassic Park was the best movie ever. And the writer, the author of Jurassic Park, Michael Crichton, was a best-selling science fiction writer. Very, very well-known. Many, many other books that were popular, The Great Train Robbery, etc. And he wrote Jurassic Park. And, you know, he raked in money from Jurassic Park for the rest of his life. He wrote many sequels to Jurassic Park. Michael Crichton.
Many sequels. He wrote one sequel, just to clarify that. My nerd radar goes crazy when he said that. It's like he wrote many sequels. He wrote one.
Novelist, the sci-fi novelist. And then you'll recall that in 2005, 3 years before he died, Michael Crichton got really political. 3 years before he died, Michael Crichton came out swinging as what people like to call a climate denier. He decided that global warming was a hoax.
Okay, totally untrue, and we'll prove that that is untrue in a minute. But just count how many times he has to drum in to the audience here that Michael Crichton doesn't believe in climate change. He doesn't believe in global warming. How many times? Also, just to note that Michael Crichton was always dabbling in a bit of political stuff. Like he wrote Rising Sun, which was about the sort of geopolitics or business politics between the Japanese and the Americans. So he's dabbled in that kind of stuff before in the past. Obviously, State of Fear was his like big, as he said, come out swinging. That is true, but that's after he went in and read the scientific data at the time on what was happening and what was being pushed, what was happening with the environments and the global climate, and then he basically came to, well, we'll see it later on, but he came to the conclusion that it wasn't the catastrophe everyone was, or most people were spouting it to be. So, but just take note how many times he calls Michael Crichton a global warming or climate change denier.
That it was not real. And he wrote a book called State of Fear, about a conspiracy of left-wing scientists to convince people to believe in global warming. He gave speeches before the American Enterprise Institute that were shown on C-SPAN and elsewhere. Michael Crichton made it his effort in the last 3 years of his life to deny global warming.
Again.
Why? Why did Michael Crichton spend the last 3 years of his life before he died of lymphoma? Why did Michael Crichton dedicate himself to the cause of climate denial? Why?
The cause of climate denial. I will eventually probably watch the rest of this video just to see if he clarifies it a bit more. But in the opening, he definitely drums into us that, Michael Crichton was a climate change denier, or he was a global warming denier, or whatever. Right at the beginning, does it?
What happened? What could possibly have happened? Now, of course.
Anyway, right, we'll stop that there. But let's go into this video. It's taken from a Charlie Rose interview. This is probably one of the most popular ones to do with Crichton and this subject. This was actually re-uploaded on March 9th, 2021. The whole interview used to be on YouTube years ago, and I saved it. But now it's only up in like segments, and I feel like that has something to do with maybe YouTube taking it down. That's complete speculation on my part, but it certainly seems that way. And you can see that they've already like tacked on their climate change is that the Wikipedia article? No, it's the UN's climate change link right down the bottom there, to make sure that you get their facts over what Michael Crichton is saying. But anyway, let's get into this, and then you can see how wrong it is to call Michael Crichton a climate change denier. And this was in 2007, I believe, this interview.
How about that?
How about that? You see. But tell me what you did and how you, I know, but tell me how you came to the conclusions, and have you changed your conclusions with new evidence? Just so we put on record what exactly you believed and said, rather than what we think you said.
What people are saying is really not true, even though at the end of that book I thought, well, people aren't going to understand this, so I'll write it in simple declarative sentences, and still people misstate it. What I said was, the Earth is definitely getting warmer.
So there you go. He believes the Earth is definitely getting warmer. So that's not him denying climate change or global warming. That's him saying, yeah, it's happening.
It's gotten, somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 or 7/10 of a degree Celsius warmer in the last 100 years. We are increasing the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.
He says that, yep, humans are contributing to adding CO2 into the atmosphere. There's no denying that since the invention of cars and other vehicles and stuff. So
it's increased 30% in the last century.
We meaning humans are doing this.
We human beings, yes. Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. We would expect a 30% increase to have some influence on temperature. We're also doing lots of other things that affect the temperature as it's measured in a global temperature reading. So we're, cutting down the forests and doing croplands and all of that. What's basically called land use changes, or the urban heat island effect also.
So that, like, he basically outlines right there, less than 2 minutes into this video, that yes, he believes humans are affecting the environments in certain ways, and yes, the Earth is getting warmer. And now we get into what drives everyone mad.
Has an effect, whether that's compensated for adequately in the way they do these calculations or not. And I said, my conclusion is that we will have 0.8 of a degree warming increase in the next 100 years. So I absolutely believe that warming is occurring, humans are involved, and it's going to continue for the next 100 years.
Then what did you say that got everybody so upset at you?
I'm not a catastrophist.
It's as simple as that. He just doesn't believe that it's a catastrophe coming, whereas loads of other people clearly do, and they're being told that there's a catastrophe coming. They've been told that there's a catastrophe coming for decades now, and really nothing has happened so far to cause any significant radical change amongst most people's minds to be like, okay, yeah, this is completely undeniable. So I've always had this viewpoint that Michael Crichton's had, personally. Even when I was a kid, I was like, you'd hear people say stuff about like what's happening in the future, and I was always skeptical about that sort of thing. And then global warming became climate change, and I don't remember anyone really talking about that too much in the mainstream. Obviously they were, but like back when I was a kid in the early to mid 90s. But then like over the last like since 2002, when Gore started releasing his stuff, it just skyrocketed, and like now you've got like Extinction Rebellion and all that sort of stuff, which we'll get onto later. But Michael Crichton being a bit of a voice of reason there, which I latched onto, and it just happened to be that he wrote the book that one of my favorite books, Jurassic Park, and it gave birth to one of my favorite film series, so that lined up nicely.
And I said one other thing too. I said I think it is not likely that carbon dioxide is going to prove to be the primary driver.
What do you think will be the primary driver?
I think the sun, and I think there are miscalculations from urban land use, generally speaking.
Okay, now, and I'm sure you read every sentence of this new report by the UN that came out of Paris. Yes?
I haven't actually, because I don't read the summary for policymakers. I read what the scientists say, not what the politicians say.
Tell me if I'm wrong. Every good scientist that I talk to says to me, 90% of the scientists agree on this.
I don't know what the percentage.
I find Charlie Rose's language there really interesting. It's like most of the good scientists I talk to. It's like, what do you mean by good scientists?
But I would.
I mean, it's the lone exception out there, and everybody says you ought to listen to them, and we do, and I've talked to them. But most of the scientists say we all agree on this. That it is catastrophic. That in fact, if the ice sheet melts.
But Charlie, that's not true. They don't say that.
Scientists don't say that?
Not everybody.
No, I didn't say everybody. I said scientists say to me, the majority of us agree with this. We agree that if, in fact, nothing's done about carbon dioxide in the air, carbon in the air, that, in fact, you're going to have these incredible things that we can see the beginnings of now, in which the ice sheet melts and it affects the weather and everything else. Tell me what's wrong about this. Oh, I know. You're bored by this or what?
Well, it's a lot of the people who talk about it, and I don't know who you're thinking of specifically, don't actually know very much, and I'm sympathetic to that, because for a long time I said, oh yes, global warming, it's a terrible problem, blah blah blah, and only when I went and looked.
Which he did. I think there's a C-SPAN interview he did back in 1993 when he was talking about the news media. I think it was that one. That video, it's out there on the internet, where he discussed global warming, and I think he even he talks about it in Jurassic Park, the novel itself, as well.
So the figures say, wait a minute, tell me again why this is a catastrophe. I see that it's something that's happening. I see that it's important. If you talk to Jesse Ausubel at Rockefeller University, he'll tell you we've been decarbonizing since the days of Abraham Lincoln and Queen Elizabeth, and we're going to continue to decarbonize. So whether or not this is going to happen fast enough for some people, it's a long-term 150-year trend. It's going to continue. You can't get agreement on almost anything, as far as I can tell. I mean, you can bring in 5 guys to talk about whether Antarctica, the core of Antarctica, is getting colder or not. Everybody agrees the peninsula, which is 2% of the mass, is getting warmer. And, they'll argue and argue and argue, and you'll come away after an hour saying, I don't know what the answer is, and that's the reality.
That's a really crucial point he brings up there, because most subjects are so nuanced, and reality is rarely ever black and white in its simplicity. And global warming, so it often, my relationship with Twitter is a strenuous one, as people might out there know. I recently rejoined it just to answer some questions about Jurassic World Dominion and plug some Dino Tracker stuff that we worked on. However, I've come off it a bit now. I said I was going to delete it, but then I didn't because I wanted to keep it up there for people who want to reference my tweets. And if Twitter reforms in the coming months, I'll go back on it. But I did see when I went on it yesterday to post something on the Chaos Theorem account that obviously all the climate stuff is happening because of in the UK they're having a heat wave, and there was all this stuff, and I saw some Jurassic fans talking about this, and what kicked me off to like look up Michael Crichton global warming videos, and then I found that Caleb video was the notion that I thought that Jurassic fans will espouse the message that is written in the movies and the book about how nature cannot be controlled, life breaks free, all that sort of stuff, and then but when it comes to the climate, loads of people talk about how we can control that by changing our behavior. And to me, it's not that simple. It's there's so many factors, as Crichton says. There's so many things out there that scientists don't have it's not even about consensus, because consensus isn't always, well, most of the time it isn't true, because it only takes one scientist to prove the rest wrong. But like the idea that we have control over this dominion, this planet that we're on, and if we change our behavior, we can change the planet. It just doesn't fit with what Jurassic Park was all about, what Crichton was talking about in the beginning. And I feel like Crichton's kind of realized that on the topic of climate change and global warming, that he was under the illusion of control when really there wasn't any to begin with, and that it's kind of, we just have to adapt to the future going forwards. And so, like, you can talk to many scientists, and as Charlie Rose says, most of the scientists will agree on this. And it's like, well, yeah, but it doesn't mean they're right. It just means that they're all in agreement. It doesn't mean that they're correct. So, yeah, that's what I find interesting, because I never hear anyone bring up, like, I don't know, for example, like the Milankovitch cycle as a reason for potential climate change. And if you don't know what that is, there's the different cycles of like orbit. If I've got my science correct here, like the orbit of the Earth around the sun, a lot of people seem to think that it's like a perfect oval shape, but it more than likely might be like an egg shape, and that egg shape oscillates around the sun at different intervals over thousands and thousands of years, and that we're sort of coming either away from or towards, I think it's away from, if I've got my facts correct, in the theory, we're moving away from the sun slowly, but obviously we're sort of at the point where we're sort of closer, and then we're going to, over the thousands of years, move away and potentially head towards another ice age, because the different Milankovitch cycles sort of make ice ages quite predictable. I may be completely wrong on that because I'm not a scientist, but like, you never hear anyone bring that up in terms of climate change. It's all about oil and car emissions, and we're the cause. You never hear anyone talk about like the actual, just the rotation of the Earth around the sun, which to me sounds more like a plausible reason, but it doesn't mean it's correct. It just means that there's another theory out there to contend with all the other theories out there, which proves Michael Crichton's point right. Like, you can talk to scientists in a room about something, give them a subject, and come away from it and be like, I don't know, because no one knows. Not truly. Everyone's living in their heads, in their own head canon, with how the world works. Even myself.
Nobody really knows that. But what I said in my book, and I defy anybody telling me I'm wrong, is I said nobody knows how fast it's going to get warmer, and nobody knows for sure what the various contributions of warming are. And I've predicted 0.8 of a degree, and nobody knows that I'm wrong.
And nothing has happened since you wrote that book to change your mind about your conclusions?
No. And what I do, I went to Germany in 2005, and it was a very hostile environment, and I gave a speech which consisted only of what was then the latest UN document, the third assessment report. And I put these graphs up, and I said to them, look, this is what they're saying. Is this okay with you? The audience got phenomenally silent. Because if you really start to say, okay, how do you validate the models? How is it done? Oh, we do it. There's a personal component of assessment. Really? Well, that's not okay for a drug. It's not okay for the maker to self-validate. We don't believe that. We don't think that's acceptable. It has to be done by somebody outside. We're talking about, if you listen to Bjorn Lomborg, $558 trillion globally to make this change. I think it's a good change to make. I think we will make it naturally. I think there's a lot of reasons to make it. I'm in favor of making it. The question is whether we should do it as a crash program for $558 trillion. And the notion of spending that money without really validating the bejesus out of the data is very bizarre to me.
Yeah, Crichton's talking about adapting to the change rather than just throwing loads of money at it in the hopes that it will actually fix the problem. When what I think, I assume Crichton here is worried about, like, you rush into something and you're going to cause so many more problems that you couldn't have foreseen had you just walked before you run.
I mean, let me put it to you this way. If global warming was a company, you couldn't buy it because they won't let you do due diligence. They won't let you look at the figures.
They being?
The scientists who do the global mean.
Okay, but let me ask this question.
Yeah.
Do you disagree with the idea that the majority of scientists who are experts in this area have a different conclusion than you?
I don't know the answer to that, and I'll tell you why. Hans von Storch does a poll of scientists every few years, and he asked them in 2003, so it's a while ago now, he said, are you totally convinced that human beings are the primary cause of the warming that you see? Are you largely convinced? Are you somewhat convinced? It was one of those five.
Right. This came out of the UN report too. Those kind of words.
Right, but he asked people to really do it, and it's a secret ballot. The number of people who were totally convinced, as opposed to largely convinced or partially convinced, I was very surprised. It was 9.4%.
Only 9% of the people are totally convinced.
Yeah, under 10.
What about what's the next step up then? Totally convinced too.
Oh, the majority are believe
convinced,
that this
but
is
not totally convinced, or it's likely but not.
Let's move a little bit. What are you going to do about it?
The UN people said. I find it a little bit difficult to have a conversation. I don't mean to have a conversation with you. I find it easy to have a conversation with you. But to talk when you dismiss the UN people and all that they're getting.
These are bureaucrats.
So just on a point there, like what Crichton says is what you're going to do about it. That's the tangible, real world things people from the general public want to know. They want to know how, if you're going to do something about it, how's it going to affect our lives? And if we haven't, I know this was a while ago, but if there's not enough evidence, or it's not, if it's still in sort of speculation, then why would anyone go along with it? That's the thing. It's like it feels to me like it's, and I don't know about Crichton's viewpoints on this, but it feels to me like, the ramp up of the climate crisis, as it's being called now. It was global cooling originally, then global warming, then climate change, and now it's sort of changing into the climate crisis. I don't know. It feels like it's just a big tax scam, because like a lot of the Western world is so well off now that they need to try and get as much money from people as possible. That's how it feels. Don't know if that's true or not, but that's how it feels to me. So like it's been very politicized when otherwise it shouldn't have been. But whenever you're going to do anything in, like, let's say, we've got this warming Earth, and in the next X amount of years, because it always changes, X amount of years, the global temperature of the Earth is going to change by this amount, and it's going to cause all this damage, which is really nebulous. It's never really like locked down to like what it's going to do. Whenever there's an earthquake or a hurricane, it's like, oh, it's global warming. It's like, but that's not. I don't think that's how it works. yeah, they've just like really ramped it up, and it just feels to me like they're just trying to scare people into buying more stuff, and or paying taxes towards stuff. That's how it feels to me. Whether I'm right or wrong, I don't know.
Interested in what the scientists say.
Okay, but that's not true, Michael. They weren't just bureaucrats.
Yes, it is.
The scientists didn't come and testify.
No,
scientists weren't involved in the publication of that at all. Scientists had nothing to do with that report.
I don't think so.
I think so.
Really?
I do.
Maybe only a few heads of the various sections, but the reality is you have to go and look at the scientific basis, that report, which will be 700 odd pages, and if you compare, for example, the 2001 paper, if you compare the summary for policymakers with what is said in the third assessment report, it bears very little relationship. It's far more confident. It has almost no detail about why somebody would say, wait a minute. There are reasons to say, wait a minute.
Now, do you have a reason to why you think that the perception of this is not as bad as it is? I mean, in other words, you believe it's not as bad as it is. Based on your reading the data, you think, yes, we're getting warmer.
The language of Charlie Rose, you believe it's not as bad as it is. Like he's saying, it is bad, but you just don't believe it. It's like, I think what Charlie Rose is like, to give him the benefit of the doubt, what he's trying to say here is, why do you doubt what most people say? That's all he's trying to say, right?
But it's not going to lead to the catastrophe. That's what you just said.
Right.
Do you have a reason that that's not the common perception?
There you go. He said it there.
It's going to lead to a catastrophe unless we do something. Unless we do something about the amount of fossil fuel we put in the air. Unless we have some kind of carbon index. Unless we get serious about this, it is going to be a catastrophe. Okay.
First thing I want to say to you is, I'm not stopping anybody from doing any of this.
Right.
And I don't want to be blamed
yes,
for the notion that, the Congress isn't going to pass the Kyoto Protocol or something like that.
Bear in mind, this is a 15-year-old video. So, and everything they're talking about here, like not just crying, but like what Charlie Rose is espousing, is still the same old stuff that a lot of people are pushing out there now, especially like from big tech and all the mainstream media. They're all pushing this stuff. Like I saw this Met Office graphic of like Britain, and it just looked like it was scorched earth, like we were in hell. And really, it's like it's summertime. Yeah, the temperatures are going to be different, but everyone, aside from a small fraction of people, everyone agrees the climate is getting warmer. Just what everyone's deliberating or like discussing is what Crichton said, is like it's people who believe it's going to be a catastrophe and people who don't think it's going to be a catastrophe. But it'd be nice if like they didn't pump fear-mongering into people. That's the thing that I think really gets me, because the younger generation, they always talk about it's for our kids and stuff in the future, we've got to worry about those. You hear loads of people talk about that sort of stuff, and I think it's more damaging to tell them that the future's bleak and that there's like no hope unless we make some radical change. I don't know, that seems more psychologically damaging and makes them feel lethargic, and they'll want to. It's basically pumping them that they need the quick fix when really they need to have the long fix, right? They need to take their time to fix problems. You don't just rush into it. Basically creating a generation of people who won't want to fix the problem, but they'll definitely shout that they want the problem fixed.
But I think the answer is that whenever you have something that's untied to the data, and when you have people adopting essentially philosophical positions, emotional positions, which the environment tremendously invites, how I feel as I walk through the woods and how I feel as I see clear cutting or something like that, very often from people who really don't understand these issues at all, then it's a very easy thing for an attitude to move in the direction of increasing demand or increasing hysteria or increasing concern, whether or not that's appropriate or not. And you can see these movements take over science. When I was a young person, every project, that every grant proposal had to be to cure cancer, because it was Lyndon Johnson's war on cancer, and there was no point. I mean, if you wanted to propose something, you had to find a way to say, well, this is going to help cure cancer, true or not.
Rather than diabetes or something else.
Right. I mean, you couldn't just be doing basic research. So I understand that these ideas can take hold, and I understand that, generally speaking, the more extreme elements will push that, and the media is not interested in a balanced perspective.
I am.
Okay.
I don't believe you, Charlie. Not at all. After you say like there is a problem in that, it's like, I mean, he is listening to Crichton, so I'll give him that.
But you're very rare.
Well,
And that's the truth.
Yeah. Well, Al Gore.
I like him very much.
What do you
He's
think
wrong
of his
on this
movie?
issue.
He's wrong?
He's wrong on this issue. That's my opinion.
How is he wrong?
I like him a lot. I'm very fond of him.
Yeah.
Wish
he'd been
done
president?
some things.
Wish he'd been president?
Yes, he's done some things.
Was that a yes to wish he'd been president?
I don't look back.
Oh, that's a cop-out.
It's not. I don't know how, given what we
Would you
know
rather
has
have seen
happened,
George Bush or Al Gore elected when they ran against each other in the year 2000?
I like Al Gore.
Okay. That's, no, there's nothing to be gained by trying to say yes or no.
I like him a lot.
Okay, I hear you. And respect his intelligence, respect his commitment to this issue,
Yes.
respect the book he wrote on the Earth, the globe, whatever it was. Yes.
Yes.
Now he's made a movie,
Yes.
Inconvenient Truth.
Yes.
And you say about what he says in that movie, what?
If I wanted to make a movie that said what he said, I could make a much better movie. There are a lot of things in that movie that are dicey and there's a lot that.
Okay, but
frankly,
let's just tell me what there is in that movie that's not dicey, but wrong.
Okay. Kilimanjaro, as an example of global warming, is wrong. 20-foot increase in sea levels, or 40-foot increases, whatever it is now, is wrong. And I think actually attitudinally it's wrong. I think that, the notion that this is a spiritual or religious issue for us is wrong.
If I remember correctly, the whole sea level rise thing that Crichton said was wrong there. If I remember correctly, I could look this up in a minute. Al Gore stated in his movie that like Florida and stuff would be underwater by 2020. I could be wrong. It's like a year that's in the past now. So Crichton was right. Al Gore was wrong.
It is a scientific matter that we need to look at with as dispassionate a way of seeing it as possible. And if we don't do that, we're just expressing rank prejudices.
So Al Gore's movie and book express rank prejudices.
That's my view, sure. I mean, he's making arguments. I mean, I love the guy. He's making arguments for which there is no data. There just isn't. And he's got these fabulous pictures of the United States being inundated, and and I had somebody call me up who'd seen it and said, "Wow, I know you live at the beach sometimes, and I have a beach house, and kiss them goodbye." I don't think so. The UN, and by the way, the new UN report, which you're so fond of, says 38 centimeter increase. 38 centimeters is a foot? What?
Fond of would not be the way I would characterize what I said. I just said that I think they listen to scientists, that the UN report was based on conversations looking at scientific data.
Charlie,
and that scientists were involved. That's all I was making.
Here's the way to think about this.
It was on the front page of every paper in the world had it huge on the front page.
4 weeks in advance.
Yeah.
Okay, question number one. You've released the summary.
You don't like the UN report, you don't like Al Gore's report, you don't like anybody who doesn't come to the conclusion. I don't mean personally. Because you think they're intellectually wrong.
I do. Yes, I do.
You think they're intellectually wrong.
I do.
You don't think they've looked at the data. And you think they exaggerate the consequences of global warming.
Somebody asked me the difference between me and Al, and I've wondered about it too.
Charlie says he thinks that they didn't look at the data. I think Crichton's trying to say that like they might have even looked at the data and specifically didn't address it or overlooked certain things, because that's the real inconvenient truth.
But I think he relies on the expert witness. And I don't. I didn't talk to anybody.
You do the work yourself.
Yes.
And you don't think he does the work himself?
No,
You don't think he's...
I don't think he goes and looks at the data. I do not. And I don't think he makes his own guess, and I don't, you know, I talked to two people, both very eminent, when I was working on the book, and both, you know, they both attacked me subsequently, because they were the leading people thinking about this, and I went to them and said, these are my problems. And I didn't get good answers back. But Charlie, the shortest version of this that I have is, I said, okay, we've had half a degree or 0.6 of a degree. It's not a crisis. What is everyone upset about? And the answer is, we're upset about the future. How do you know? Because I believe the future is unknowable. How do you know what this is going to be? And their answer is, we have a computer model of global climate. And I say, climate, according to the last UN report, is a coupled, nonlinear, chaotic system. And they say, long-term prediction of climate is not possible. That's what they say. Direct quote. So I'm saying I don't think that a computer model cuts it. I'm not having it.
Yeah, exactly. So the computer model's going to basically spew out a scenario, but it's not going to accurately depict how the Earth works and all the factors that go into how this planet works and how it operates, and the relationship to the sun and other things. Like, it's impossible to quantify. So, and as Crichton said, and I think he goes into it a little bit now, but the people are scared of the future, and I get the sense that that's where a lot of this hysteria comes from around climate change. People just need to relax and adapt. Simple as that.
Think about what I've done here in this conversation. I said, tell me exactly what it is you believe.
Just drink plenty of water. Put sun cream on. Stay out of the direct sunlight as much as possible. Or as much as you want to. There you go. Done. Enjoy the summer.
And why you believe it, and what do you say to those people who have a different opinion? And you said they haven't looked at the data as well as I have, and understand what I'm saying.
Most people I know haven't looked at the data at all.
Al Gore being an example of that.
Well, I don't know whether he has or hasn't, but that's my sense of what he's done.
And you think that the reason it's gotten such, I mean, it is now, in the opinion of many, has reached a critical mass, this judgment that it's more severe than you think it is because it has a certain why does it have such currency?
Well, first of all, people are...
What is the way about America works that gives it such
it's
currency?
not America, it's human beings. They line up for the catastrophe. They're ready for it. They're ready for overpopulation. They're ready for resource depletion. They're ready for whatever it is. We're ready for bird flu. I mean, you know, it's going to wipe us all out.
Bird flu is not a problem either?
It's a potential problem. Could be a very serious problem.
Yes, I thought so.
Yeah. But I mean, people they're ready. They're excited. They're excited about Mad Cow. I think it's far. For example, I've done this as a sort of test.
I mean, how is he wrong? I mean, look at what happened during COVID. Utter hysteria and craziness around that, which most of it was probably unfounded. Like, it was good to be diligent and prepared and all that sort of stuff, but sort of when you're, I mean, in the UK especially, when your leaders are having parties and stuff, when they're telling everyone to lock down, you know how serious they're really taking it. So people were lining up for it, man. I think I still see people wearing masks now in the UK in this hot weather, well after COVID-19 is a thing of the past. I mean, I see videos online, should I say, of this, because I don't go back to Earth. I'm safe out here in space, right next to this scorching hot sun.
Sit down at a dinner party and you say, the world is coming to an end. We have the most horrible things, and you get immediately the aroused attention at the table. Alternatively, you say, you know what? Basically, everything's good. The world's getting better.
Nobody cares.
No, they get angry, or they turn away. It's not what we want to hear. We want to hear disaster.
But isn't that true about writing books and also making movies?
Yeah.
The terrorist threat is
Crisis.
what sells.
Crisis.
Drama sells.
Tension. drama.
Well, that's what you write,
Excitement.
is it not? I mean, you're saying about it, it's terrible. A man has this rare cancer, and he has a certain kind of mechanism within his cell structure that enables him to combat it. And somebody comes along and owns it.
I know, but you don't want to read a story that doesn't have a story.
Or that doesn't have life and death.
Yeah.
You know, or
Doesn't have
somebody willing to lose their life.
Doesn't have
or
consequences.
face the consequence of losing their life. Did you?
Yeah, but the difference between why he brings up, he's like, Crichton, you write books and stuff like that dabble in drama and that, but they're fiction, right? We know they're not real, and it's tap into our reptilian brains about fight and flight. That's why drama sells so much, is because you want to put yourself in the shoes of these characters who are facing dragons, essentially. Not dragons, dragons literally sometimes, but like, I mean, the metaphorical dragon, like facing your fears and overcoming them. That's why drama sells. Because people have a lot of stuff like that in their lives that they're facing, and they want to read stories and go on adventures and watch movies that take them on a potential journey to maybe enlighten themselves on a current issue that they have at home. Simple as that.
I mean, you know how much I like you. You know, we've had more good conversations here than anybody has. Did you have trepidation about doing this? 'Cause I think you're wrong, but I don't know. So therefore, I can't prove it.
Yeah, I did.
You know,
I didn't
and
want
trepidation, saying, why do I, Michael Crichton, need to go here? I mean, just keep my opinions to myself.
I was asking myself about that very question before making this video. I was like, should I make this? And then I was like, and there's a big part of me that was like, no, I probably shouldn't touch this because it might invite the anger, as it were, as Crichton said. But you know what? I wanted to. I want to mix things up a bit.
I did. I didn't want to write it. I decided I wouldn't write it. I had breakfast with a friend of mine, a scientist who I hadn't seen in 30 years, and I told him my dilemma, and he said, no, you have to write it. I said, I'm going to get killed for this. He said, no, you have to write it. I would like to be able to say that as a result of that conversation, I decided to write it. I didn't. I went home and I thought, you know what, I'm not writing this. Doesn't matter. I'll, as you said, keep my opinion to myself. I started to work on something else, and I felt like a coward. And I thought, what are you going to do? You have looked at the data, and you really believe that it's an effect, but not something that we as human beings should be worrying about lots and lots of other things. I mean, in a sense, I'm taking the Bjorn Lomborg position. It's low on the totem pole. We ought to be taking care of disease. We ought to be taking care of world hunger. We ought to be taking care of a lot of things before we do this. And
before we spend money on global warming, is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Right.
But you're not arguing that we shouldn't reduce the amount of fossil fuel we put in the atmosphere.
No,
I mean, you'd be happy with tougher standards on auto emissions and all that stuff.
Well, should have done it decades ago.
Yeah. So anything you can do, you're in.
I was in favor of a carbon tax 25 years ago. You know,
I mean, I haven't really looked into the carbon tax stuff too, from 15 years ago. So I'll leave that up in the air. But the whole wanting to keep the planet clean, no one, I don't want anyone watching this video and think I don't want people to give up looking after the environment. Don't throw rubbish around. Let's try and recycle as much plastic as possible, because the amount of plastic in the ocean is disgusting. All that sort of stuff. No one wants a dirty house, right? We want a clean house. But that's an entirely different issue than global warming and the climate crisis.
It's a very logical thing to do. Still waiting for it, but
Yeah, but so in other words, you have no invested interest in being opposed to this, and in fact, most of the things that people want to do to restrict it, you're in favor of.
Yeah. I want an environment that's great. I don't think this is as important a problem as other people do. That's the essence of it.
That's the bottom line. All right, suppose it's as serious as they think it is. I mean, I want to get you to come back here with a scientist.
Sure.
Would you do that?
Sure.
You give me your promise you'll come back?
Absolutely.
If it's a very good scientist who says Michael is full of... No, this is what they'll say. There's somebody who'll come back and say, Michael has read the data wrong. and here's why I believe.
You know, what would be interesting
wrong.
is if you could put up graphs.
Well, we can do that.
Yeah,
Technology is wonderful.
that would be a good thing to do.
All right. Let me talk about some other things about you. Because,
Okay.
If only they really had
so-
that conversation.
Jasper Johns has a big new
Show in Washington.
show. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful show.
Is he good?
Oh, it's extraordinary.
Is he the
I think I'll end that there. And then there's this one other video that I wanted to discuss by Michael Crichton, which I think puts a nice cap on this whole subject here. Michael Crichton on environmentalism as a religion. And this is something I noticed, but I didn't really clock onto it until I can't remember where I first heard this idea. But then when I went and looked back a few years ago at Michael Crichton's videos on this subject, I found this one. I was like, oh yeah, well, obviously this is what's going on. So,
I'm Daniela Benstock. I'm also a freshman here. You stated in your remarks to the Commonwealth Club in
sorry, you can see that this is from 2005. So 16th of March 2005.
San Francisco that one of the most powerful religions in the Western world is environmentalism. Can you explain why you refer to environmentalism as a religion?
Because I have training in anthropology, the idea that anthropologists have about what constitutes a religion or what functions a religion serves are a little bit different from how you think about it if you categorize religions as, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, something like that. So from the standpoint of an anthropological view, a religion is a collective set of beliefs. There is a leader or leaders who promote the beliefs among the followers. Followers make some kind of contribution or change in their lifestyle based on the religious belief. The religious belief gives them a total view of the world in terms of how the world is structured, what's right, what's wrong, what's good action, what's bad action. That all fits perfectly onto environmentalism. The other thing that environmentalism does, which I said to this group, is that it rather precisely maps a lot of Judeo-Christian beliefs about the origin of the world and so on, so that in environmental thinking there is a view that there used to be a sort of Eden, and then people came and ruined that Eden, and that we are therefore sort of original sinners because we're destroying this planet. And what we can do, however, is get salvation through sustainability. And if you're a good person, you will seek salvation, and if you're a bad person, you'll drive SUVs. That is a kind of a religious belief. That was my argument.
So I'm well aware of the sort of irony of this video. When I was watching this earlier and preparing for all this, I realized that obviously it will look like that Crichton is the Messiah. On my part, I've got him looking really funny down here with his like laser focused eyes, and obviously I would be looked at as like a follower of the Messiah Crichton, who's espousing our views on the environment and all that sort of stuff. But the key difference here, and why I don't think it maps onto a religion, what I'm doing with Crichton in this video, he mentions they make a change in their lifestyle and they make a contribution to the person they're following, which is like someone could consider this video that. But the difference is I never thought there was an Eden. And people like me who followed Crichton and other people like Reed Bryson, who Neuron Lomberg, as he mentioned, there was never this idea of a perfect Eden at the beginning, or the original sin out there. So that's where it doesn't map on. But like the way he talks about how the West has dealt with environmentalism and how people have reacted to it and created things like, I don't know, Extinction Rebellion is a good one. I pulled up some pictures here that kind of look at this image. Like if that looks like a religion to me. Like you just look at that image and I know they mean well. Everyone has good intentions. What does climate justice even mean? Justice for who? The planet? Racial justice. Climate justice equals racial justice. Now I'm just completely lost. But it's this. They've got their symbol and It's very much like a religion, and that's what kind of makes me think no, I'm not on board. Not necessarily with all the messages that are being espoused, but just the idea of joining that religion. It puts me off it.
To fear you were very negative towards environmentalism. What caused you to be so prejudiced?
It's like the earth is their god. Like in their canon, in their biblical canon, the earth is their god.
Towards this religion.
Just going to rewind that quickly.
Prejudice environment. To fear you were very negative towards environmentalism. What caused you to be so prejudiced towards this religion?
Well, I don't think it should be a religion, and I don't know. It's interesting that you said it was prejudice, that it's a disagreement. I'm not sure I would argue it's not a prejudice, that it's a different way of seeing things. The core of my argument is that if you're going to be responsive to the environment is always changing. And our understanding of the environment is always changing. And if we are to do better with the environment than we do now, and I would tell you that at this moment, we have raw sewage seeping out of the Yellowstone National Park. So we're not doing a great job. I mean, I mention the parks because the parks are unlike land use where there's conflicts about should we build a house or should we build. The parks are set aside. The parks are there for us to preserve them. And it turns out we don't know how to preserve them. And we won't admit that we don't know how to preserve them. It's been a disaster what we've done. And so when I look
He has an entire video about that where he looks at, I believe it's Yellowstone National Park, and he looks at that specifically, and he talks about how that was managed by humans introducing different animals and stuff to try and cope with overpopulation of deer. They reintroduced wolves and all this sort of stuff, and how it was never sustained. It just was ever evolving, with humans just changing it all the time, and other elements coming in and changing it. And he uses that as a kind of like an example, and blow that up to a global scale. It's kind of similar to how humans see the Earth. Like, we want it to be the sustainable planet, but the planet can never be sustainable 100% because the Earth's spinning, and it's spinning around the sun, and there's other elements from outside space which is affecting the planet. So it's impossible to have a sustainable planet. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't have we should just give up. It basically means that we just need to adapt our thinking and calm down a bit about the future, and adapt to it, and just tackle what comes with I don't know, a strong head on top of these shoulders, not wailing our hands in the air and saying we're all doomed. It doesn't help anyone.
How we treat the environment, I think we have to be flexible. I think we have to try things and see how they turn out. We have to be ready to change course. We have to be able to adapt. We have to say we're wrong and let's do it right. We have to do research. This is all stuff that fundamentalist religions can't do. And if environmentalism is a kind of fundamentalist religion, then that's not a good way to manage the environment. We need a scientific approach. We need a non-religious approach. We need a way to look at this and do better than we've done. A lot better. It's essential. It's essential for you guys and, for your children.
Mr. Crichton. Hi.
And there we go. That is the end of that. So, yeah, just in summary, I have always had this sort of similar viewpoint to what Crichton talks about in this video, about how, approaching the future, and I've never been one to get overly dramatic about anything like this, but obviously on this day in the UK, back on Earth, they're talking a lot about how there's the climate crisis, and it made me really want to finally tackle Crichton's views on this, because it's kind of a good because he's the writer of Jurassic Park, and I've got my Jurassic World hat on, and you know, guys know out there how much I'm involved with the Jurassic franchise, that it felt wrong to me to just not talk about this subject. You know, I don't know, so this might be the wrong phrase to use, but I kind of felt like I was dancing on the grave of Crichton if I didn't at least bring this subject to the attention of other fans out there who may actually be sitting there completely worried about the future and what's happening with the global climate, and know nothing about Crichton's viewpoints on this and how he changed. And hopefully, you know, we can go towards the future with a more careful understanding of the way the human mind works and how we react to things. Obviously, I am a bit cynical, so my mind does go that, like, I want to see it to believe it. Because Crichton was saying all this before social media, and now social media is a thing. Like, things like on Twitter are way more immediate, way more in your face. They make you feel like it's happening in your own home, and everything seems more personal when it's on Twitter and other social media platforms. So so that I feel like that's why you get things like Extinction Rebellion. I keep going back to them, but they're like the perfect example of that sort of religion of environmentalism, as Crichton puts it, and how they're like gluing themselves to paintings in galleries and trying to spray a building with blood red paint, which goes completely wrong. If you haven't seen that video, it's hilarious. But it's that religious aspect of it which has sort of disturbed me more over the years, and kind of just wanted to put my 2 cents out there to try and hopefully at least open some minds out there who are fans of maybe Crichton or Jurassic Park to admit when maybe things aren't what they seem, and not just follow the consensus because it's like the popular thing to do. That's my 2 cents. I hope this video has been interesting, bit different for the Pterodome, but yeah, I'm now going to drink a ton of water and go to sleep. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the near future. Bye bye.